Hi. There are tons of things to worry about and be concerned about when you're buying a house. Did I get the right rate? Am I buying in the right neighborhood? Am I overpaying? All kinds of things you can be concerned about, and they're all valid. In addition to that, there are issues and concerns with the house you're buying that could affect your life, your health, and that of your family as well. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm not here to scare you. I'm not here to give you things to worry about that you haven't already thought about. But you do need to be prepared for and educated about various issues that can occur within houses in the area so you know what to do about them and you don't make a costly mistake as you're going through the process to settlement. So we're going to take up a few environmental concerns that go along with and are often found in properties here in the DMV and in Montgomery County specifically. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, but let's go through them one by one. The first one I want to talk to you about is lead-based paints. Now, lead is an issue because if ingested or if gotten into the body in sufficient quantities, it can cause developmental issues in children, it can cause sickness, it can even cause death in high enough quantities. Lead-based paints were outlawed in 1978 in this region as well as nationally. And so since then, you can't buy them and you can't use them. However, many of the houses that are here that you may be looking at are old enough to have lead-based paints within the structure. If it was built before 1978, it has likely been painted with lead-based paints. Now, it may have been painted over several times since then, and hopefully it has, so lead-based paints may or may not be an issue, but that's what we want to talk about tonight. The issue is not whether there is lead-based paint on the property. The issue is whether there's a lead-based paint hazard. One of the techniques for successful remediation, if there is lead-based paint on a property, is to repaint it, encapsulation. So if the paint is sound, if the paint is in good condition and it's not damaged, there may not be anything to worry about. And the EPA's website will go into more detail about this. Lead-based paint hazards can be seen by cracked, chipping, peeling, dusting, chalking paint, and that means it could be getting into the air, it could be getting into the water. You typically want to see this around windows and doors, railings, that sort of thing. So if there's a lead-based paint hazard, it's something to concern yourself with. And that's the thing to worry about, not the fact that there's lead-based paint on the property, but that there's a lead-based paint hazard on the property. If you're buying a property here in the area, you'll see federally mandated disclosures as well as state mandated disclosures on the issue. And you'll know if the property has been built before 1978, whether the likelihood is there that the property has been painted with lead-based paints, and if there are any reports or disclosures about any lead-based paint hazards, they'll be provided with you at that time. So, first thing, lead-based paint hazards. It's a very common thing in this area due to the age of homes. Any house built before 1978 likely has it, and the older it is, the higher the percentage of those properties will have had it, and the more chances of it being a lead-based paint hazard are present. Now, the next one we want to talk about is radon gas. Radon is not something people really thought about till maybe between 15 and 20 years ago, but it's become something that more and more people are becoming aware of. Radon is the number one cause of lung cancer in non-smoking individuals, and it's responsible for 29,000 deaths per year, according to the EPA's website. Radon gas is naturally occurring. It's heavier than air, and it is the result of decay of organic substances in the soil. It is in the area, it's in soil in these areas, and the question is whether or not it's present in your house. Since it is heavier than air, it tends to pool in the basement, and since it also is affected by air currents in your home, it can be moved about. So it can get into the air supply, it can get into the water supply, and if you're exposed to it in sufficient quantities, it can be dangerous over time. Remediation for radon gas involves the use of a ventilation system. Relatively inexpensive. It might cost somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 for the average home to have the equipment installed and retested for. So it's not a tens of thousands of dollars sort of issue to fix, but it is something that if you're not aware of it, can be causing health issues with you and your family without you even knowing about it. Like I said, it's heavier than air. It is invisible. You can't see it. You can't smell it. You can't touch it. So you don't even know if it's there, but it can be having an effect on you without you even being aware of it. So it is something that you want to pay attention to. In Montgomery County, if you don't include a radon test contingency as part of your purchase, it is required that the seller provide a recent radon test report on or before settlement. Now, they're not required to do anything about it if the levels are high, but they are required to give you that report, and then at least you know what's going on and you can do something about it if there is an issue in your house. And the EPA will tell you all about the action level and how high the levels are that are harmful, how high the levels they should be, that you should test periodically, that sort of thing. But radon is something that more and more people have become aware of. It is something to concern yourself with. And if you're buying a house in this area, it's something you should definitely test for if you're buying it. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is mold. Now, the interesting thing about mold is as soon as you say that word, people get very worried, very scared, very fearful. Mold can be dangerous. Mold can affect people's health very severely, and minimally, it can cause issues with people that are sensitive to airborne particles. Not all mold is harmful, and mold is everywhere. People talk about black mold. Most molds that you're going to see in a house, from what I can tell in my research, are dark in coloration, but there is a particular type of mold that is in fact named black mold, and it's highly toxic and highly damaging and highly dangerous to a lot of people. The only way to know if a particular type of mold is harmful or dangerous is to have it tested. And you can do that as part of the purchase transaction. You just have to allow for enough time because in addition to the testing procedure itself, it often takes some turnaround time from the labs and then whatever time it might take to remediate. Remediation usually involves drying out the area, minimally from 24 to 48 hours, and then removal. And it depends on how extensive or how severe the infestation might have been, what that's going to involve. Now, many home inspectors will point out discoloration that may be seen as part of the home inspection process. But most of these guys are not certified in it. So for them to say that it is or is not mold, it's not something they're going to do readily. They may give you a statement something like conditions conducive to microbial growth or some such thing. It's a clue, it's a red flag, and it tells you that you might want to do something more about the property or test it minimally to find out what the deal is. But be aware that just because there's some discoloration, it's not necessarily something to concern yourself with. Another thing you should factor in is that if there is mold, and often you will find issues with this in the basement, the issue might not be the basement itself. It might actually be an issue outside. Check the house's gutters. Are they clogged? Are they preventing water from being drained away from the property, or are they leaching down along the foundation and getting into the house? Has the grading around the house settled towards the property instead of away, so that water and moisture are constantly being channeled away from the property and not to it. So many times the issue that's causing the mold is not very serious and can be easily remedied by a landscaper who's well versed in water management. If there is a mold issue inside the house, it can sometimes be fairly expensive to take care of. It may involve removal of the portions of the structure that are involved. It will definitely involve cleaning and sometimes fumigation and that sort of thing. So it can be fairly costly, and you would want to hopefully have the seller take care of this if it's found so that you're not saddled with that expense after settlement. All right, we've talked about lead-based paints. We've talked about radon. We've talked about mold. Now we're going to talk about asbestos. Asbestos was a very commonly used insulating material which was banned in the late 1980s. It is a mineral, and due to the configuration of the fibers that are made from it, it was breathable and it got in the lungs and caused various types of cancers involving the lungs and the tissues surrounding the lungs. As I mentioned, asbestos was banned in the late 1980s, so it's not very commonly going to be found anymore, but it will be found in many cases in homes that were built prior to that. You can find it in attic insulation, wall insulation. There are certain types of roof and siding shingles that contained it. It was found in attic and wall insulation. Some types of textured paints employed it. So it was fairly commonly used. It was often used in cases of insulation because it is a substance that insulates against heat very, very well, and that's why it was used. According to the EPA's website, asbestos is not really a cause for concern until it becomes disturbed or if the materials containing it are damaged. Like in the case of floor tiles that you'll often see around here. If the floor tiles are intact and they're not damaged, there's really not much to worry about it according to the EPA's website. If it's damaged, if it's cracked, if it's crumbling, then it can be getting into the air and that's something to worry about. As a homeowner, you should never do anything about itself because simply by disturbing it further can create a health hazard. So you want to be careful of that. You do want to hire a contractor that specializes in this sort of thing so it prevents it from getting throughout the house and it's disposed of safely. If there's a concern about any of these materials, in some cases, encapsulating or sealing the material is all that's needed. And there are ways to do that. There are contractors that specialize in that sort of thing. So you can encapsulate, you can seal it in some cases and not have to worry about disposal or removal, which can get quite costly. The last one we're going to talk about in this segment is underground storage tanks. Um, at present, most homes that you find around here are heated with natural gas or electricity. In days gone by, heating oil was often used to heat homes, and in many cases, the tanks were buried underground. Problem with that is over time they deteriorated and they were forgotten about, and it caused some pretty severe health hazards. And when the damage occurred, it was often very costly to dispose of and remove. Sometimes homes were converted to natural gas or some other heating source, and the tanks were just simply forgotten about, and they still exist in some cases. There are some houses around that still have them, and the discovery can put a bit of a monkey wrench in the transaction because they may need to be taken care of prior to settlement, and that's not necessarily and always going to be an easy thing. All right, so we've talked about a few things: lead-based paints, radon, mold, asbestos, underground tanks. There are others, and you can do some research to find out, but these are ones that are more commonly seen in the DMV and in Montgomery County. Each one of them requires a certain method of handling, and each one also carries with it sort of a gauge of how hazardous they may be, depending on the condition that you find them. So, generally speaking, not all of these issues, when found, need to be taken care of. But if they do, you want to be aware of them so you can operate smartly and know what to negotiate with your seller should they become something that you have to deal with. At any rate, I hope I haven't scared you too much. There's a lot to worry about when you're buying a house. Like I said, deadlines, finances, all of those things. And then there are things in the physical universe right here in front of us that could be dangerous or harmful as well. And you need to be aware of them, despite the fact that in most cases it's not going to be an issue. Just be aware of them so you know how to deal with them and you can be causative over it rather than reactive. Anyway, talk to your agent, talk to your attorney if you're using one, and find out what's best in your circumstances. And if you want to go over them with me, I'm happy to talk to you.